So, Mike has posted a video called "Was Endwalker a Failure?" which is very spicy and very brave to do because people are going to be coming out the woodwork to get mad that you have said this. Even though you've asking a question and maybe the answer to that question is no. How dare you ask this question, Mike? Okay. Do I think that, before I start watching, do I think Endwalker was a failure? Dranny, thank you for the 5 gift subs. Hey, thank you so much for that. It depends on what metric you're using. And everyone might have, like, depending on how you play the game, you might have a different answer. I'm a mid-core player. I like to be mid-core. And so for me, yes. But casual players I've talked to liked it. I think that the 6.0 was a success for the story. I did not like the patches. I thought the patches were kind of fail in terms of story because they felt like well, we'll talk about it. I don't need to say everything. We're gonna watch his opinion and hear what he has to say. What does failure mean? What is a failure? Really, when it comes to a video game being a failure or not, there's only one question you can ask. Did I have fun? Did I personally have fun? So for someone, they might say, no, I didn't. So for them, yeah, that was a failure. If you played it and you thought, yeah, I did have fun, it wasn't a failure for you. But everyone is entitled to their own opinion, and we all have different play styles. So it's good to listen to people whom you might disagree with, because when you hear them talk about something you don't agree with them on, it can help you better understand why you think the way that you do, in a way that's actually more helpful than everyone just agreeing and circle jerking all the time. All right, let's hop in. What? Oh. Going back down the road of Endwalker. Oh my gosh. That's cool. Oh wow, what a cool opening. You put the logo on the moon. It's too late. I already put an American flag up there, so I claimed it first. No way. Wait. No way! Oh my gosh! Oh my god. What? Holy shit! Giga Chat editors. Giga Chat editors for Preach. What the hell? This is insane. This is insane.
Let us all drink in how monumental a task and
No. First, let's all drink in that crazy opener. You are the Endwalker. That's you, Preach. That's you.
Walker is for
Mike
creative
Lander.
Business Unit 3. I doubt that many people watching this right now were there that day that Yoshi P launched his nuke at the game, eradicating it to bring from those ashes a realm reborn. 11 years ago, August 2013 is when this fresh journey begun, and now it must come to an end. And I imagine that most of you watching this who joined later were told over and over again when your friends or colleagues were trying to entice you in, story. This story is so beloved, so cared for that you have to enjoy it. It's going to be amazing.
Well, I joined it in Heaven's Ward. I started in Heaven's Ward. And at the time, I don't remember people really telling me about this story. They were just like, oh, this game that... Because at the time, we all thought that it had been a failure. That it really had a nasty stigma associated with it. And I wonder if people who have been out of the loop for a long time still might even think that. It took years and years for FF14 to overcome the stigma from the failed launch originally for 1.0. And so for me, people were just like, oh, did you know? Did you hear? FF14 is good now. Like, it's good. You should try it. And I didn't believe it for all of Realm Reborn. For Heavensward, I was like, okay, maybe.
I rated Heavensward and Shadowbringers as 2 of the top 5 RPG, and I'm not talking just MMO, RPG stories ever told in video games. And
yes.
now, 11 years later, they have the task of bringing it all to an end. Advertised loud and clear for all to know, Endwalker is going to bring it all to a conclusion and move the game in a new direction. This is exciting and terrifying. The story they're concluding is responsible for so many tears, laughs, memories, theories, and never-ending discussions, forming one of the most loyal fan...
That's his character. That's him, like, moving forward in the story and the crawlers lining up to, like, welcome him in.
...bases of all time. FF14 is known for its incredibly welcoming, heartwarming community and friendly atmosphere. However, disrespecting the main story quest, the MSQ, or not loving one of the scions, one of the main...
Hey, that's me! This is me, though. This is me when I find out you skipped.
...characters. And that super friendly, welcoming fanbase is likely to burst into your home at Christmas and set the whole thing on fire.
Oh my god.
Endwalker. This one's tricky because Endwalker is essentially two parts. You've got the beginning, which is your MSQ.
Okay.
And then you've got your second half, post-MSQ.
Oh,
the
God.
new journey. The
No!
new path. As such, whether you like this side or this side, opinions are going to vary wildly. Some people like both. Some people like this bit, and some people don't like this bit. And then that's going to lead to a lot of frustration and disappointment with parts of the game.
Yeah.
And we'll get to that bit. Sure.
That's the thing that people really didn't get when I tried to talk about this. And maybe he's observed that and so decided to come out with a whiteboard to make it more clear that, hey, even though 6.0 was pretty banging, when we're looking at an expansion and review, we need to think about the full package. Okay. We got to think about all of it, the whole thing. The whole experience.
Let's get into the
Patches
low poly
and
grapes and Male Vieira, the expansion
Male
launched
Vieira.
with. It would be hard to find many who actively dislike the MSQ, or disliked this one, which in and of itself is phenomenal. Media in general is renowned for not satisfying its audience with their conclusions. It's a problem spanning multiple genres and the whole array of storytelling mediums, from TV to video games, from Game of Thrones to Lost, and from Lost to Seinfeld. The end of an era is often not what audiences expected or desired or dreamt up, and can leave them with that lingering frustrations of how they would
Actually,
have ended
a good point.
Actually,
a good point that I haven't heard someone bring up before. The fact that maybe whenever you close out such an epic saga, there's always going to be some lingering, like, I don't know if regret is the right word, or doubt for people that maybe don't want to completely let go of that. And maybe there's some, like, inherent sadness and negativity that comes with having to say goodbye to something you cherished for so long, that could potentially color your expectations or judgment of the way that they chose to wrap it up. I haven't heard anyone point that out before, but I think it's possible.
Walker surpassed these expectations, with most conversations arguing as to whether it was better than Shadowbringers. Was it one of the best stories ever told or not? Even deeper than that, did the Endwalker MSQ simply make Shadowbringers even better? We've discussed it in detail, but Meteion for me never quite matched Emmett's self, despite her and Hermes having clear sympathetic values just as Emmett did. She's so blatantly going to be the antagonist from her very first interaction that it didn't have me waiting for her overall character development, just her turn to the eventual dark side. Elpis was a surprise.
I don't know. I think I'm just dumb because I didn't see that coming
As
at
no
all.
one could have expected. The relationship explored of Emmett, Vanar, and Hythlodaeus is a highlight for everybody. Garlemald, for me, is utterly outstanding in its simple yet soul-crushing portrayal of a once great society reduced to a shell.
Man, that was so dark. I can't believe they did that. I'm still shocked. Garlemald was a trip. They really did that. That's probably the darkest this game ever got. I can't remember a more shocking scene than what happened there. Horrific. Well, actually I can, but I'm not going to say what it is. Yeah.
Of them former selves.
Ooh.
Defeating Zodiac.
It's kind of... It showed maybe some... I think what I liked about that was that it showed their willingness to take some risks and take the game into a really dark space that it's not been to before. Seeing them take risks with the story is really positive. But then I just didn't feel like they took a lot of risks with the post-main story quest story, which was, for me, I have a pretty strong opinion about this. For me, Endwalker MSQ was so fucking good in so many different ways. And maybe when I try to compare the patch stories to that, it just really falls flat for me.
The long-renowned Big Bad so early completely threw people's fan theories into shambles. They had plenty of time to roll along with the actual ending without constantly waiting for their fan theories to come true. Remarkably clever story writing and pacing, almost perfectly designed for such an invested audience, especially those who have written the ending of this tale in their heads months, if not years ago. Loperitz gave everything a much-needed levity, while mixing in the resolution of story threads that had been hot community
Where's
topics.
our Loperit?
Urianje's resolution with Moonbreeder's parents no doubt brought many people into despair of meeting herself.
That was really beautiful.
As the whispers played on the Warrior of Light's final footsteps of the MSQ, and the ending of this decade-long journey was in sight, it would be difficult for anyone to argue that CBU 3 over-delivered on expectations. If this review ended there, then Endwalker would deserve an S rank for its story alone. But as with all MMO journeys, it doesn't end there. It shouldn't be discounted. The additions of Reaper and Sage, super well received. People really liked it, and they made good choices with this. Changing Alphinaud to a Sage immediately brought him a more maturity and made the one super nerd who was painting naked pictures of Y'shtola a little bit cooler, right? And also it helped out Xenos. Reaper is a badass job, it simply is, and Xenos is a character with a mixed reception. I'm a Xenos lover. He could be combat sexual with me all day, every day, but not everybody feels the same way, right? And Reaper gave him a new lease on life and a new...
I do think that Endwalker was an expansion that changed everyone's minds about Xenos, because before it, people were definitely more on the fence about him. And I remember thinking, it was so bad that there was a point where I was like, oh God, this is going to be the Xenos expansion. But Ishikawa's in charge. So I'm sure that there's going to be a way that they're going to turn it around and make us invested in this character. And like, they're going to flesh out this character. And they fucking did. They fucking did. I mean, I knew they would, but she did. I remember the scene where Alice asked him a question that was like, why are you the way that you are? It was something like that. And Xenos just says, would you feel better if I had a good reason? And that was such a raw line, because it felt like it was kind of meta in a way, like talking to the players who didn't really understand him, didn't like him. That's the point. That was the point. And like, for him to say it like that, I got it. I finally understood what he's meant to represent. The point of no return. Man, that was awesome. Okay, let's just...
But here, my friends, here is where that journey takes a fork. Because now we are unfortunately all suffering, ladies included, from post-nut clarity. The Hydaelyn Zodiac storyline has come to an end, and the shininess is wearing off. Everybody will always tell you, when a new MMO is coming out, it's generally always a good thing to jump in. Even for the price of buying a new game, you're probably going to get 2 or 3 months out because new jobs, new quest lines, new side quests, new this, new that, everything's shiny, new raids, new things to explore, and all that fun.
Right.
But then, depending on the player, a couple of months down the line, sometimes it's longer, you start to see the details. And that's when things change. So let's get the post MSQ out of the way now before we get down to the nuts and bolts. The callback to FF4 was great. It's my favorite. It had so much potential twists and turns with Golbear, Zero, Cecilia, and CBU3 did plenty to push that speculation as to what was really going on. Its downfall was that it didn't, and could never, ever carry the weight of the previous MSQ editions because the grim darkness of Zodiac and Hydaelyn was finished. Filler is a word that gets tossed around plenty in regards to the post-MSQ of Endwalker. Just something to tide people over until Dawn Trail and having...
I actually kind of disagree that that it was impossible for it to have been better in its own right. In fact, I think that when you have a more self-contained story, sometimes it's easier to tell a more compelling story when you're limited by time. When you have to start a story and have a climax and end it, if you can do all of that within a patch series, that could be very satisfying. That's one of the reasons why I think Shadowbringers was such a good expansion, was because it was fairly self-contained. You need to go to another planet, deal with their problems, and wrap it all up before we return. It wasn't really, it was in some ways like disconnected from the rest. Not entirely, but it was somewhat disconnected from the rest of the narrative, which is why a lot of people who said that they skipped and they only played Shadowbringers still had a fantastic time and enjoyed it a lot, because the story really is about this other place. And I think that sometimes can make things easier as a narrative device. So I don't think that just because it came after this epic story means that the post MSQ couldn't be epic as well. It definitely could.
No bearing on the big picture. Personally, I find this ridiculous. We don't know what the big picture is yet, and to suspect the story writers of FF14 of all people don't know what they're doing is really dismissive.
I mean,
Zero and Golbez fall into the same box as the Warriors of Darkness all those years ago. At the time, they too seemed somewhat throwaway and pointless, but we all know how that turned out. I doubt anyone here thinks Fordola and Arenvald aren't going to make their presence known again in the future, but as their arc takes place amongst the old story arc, it's not considered filler by anyone. The post-MSQ was used, in my opinion, to get the story and development of what will be important characters done now, so that later, it's not needed in the middle of the main story. In Zero's case, we now have a character that has been completely altered by witnessing the positive actions of the Scions on the general populace. No doubt, when the Scions doubt themselves, they will rely on the once closed off and distant Zero to remind them of what they've done and their true path.
I want to believe that, but I don't know. Like, so far, I don't think Zero is going to be involved in Dawn Trail. Of course, I could be wrong about that, but we haven't seen anything that would lead us to that. Now, maybe they will have her as a character for the expansion that comes after Dawn Trail. Like, maybe she'll be part of things again. But right now, maybe he means the following expansions afterward. I feel like we're going to get Marasidia after, so it's possible that she might make her appearance there. Even though I really wish that she would be in Dawn Trail so we could see Bikini Zero. Let's get some sun on them cheeks, girl.
I don't believe that any story told in FF14 is wasted. And as of now, and at least since A Realm Reborn, I have no reason to believe that that's the case this time. That's not to say that I don't understand why people didn't feel as strongly about it as they had in the past. After all, the emotional weight of Endwalker it took a decade to achieve. A fresh tale needs time to find its legs. However, beyond all those things, the biggest...
I also don't agree. Like, I don't think that you need to invest a lot of time in a story for it to be good. I think that even within 5 minutes, it's possible to tell a story that is compelling. Even within, like, for example, I can't believe I'm bringing this up, but Genshin Impact has some stories. I've done some character stories, for example, in Genshin Impact, like Dia's story, that you do in like 1 or 2 hours. And during that time, you get to know brand new characters. And after 1 or 2 hours, there have been many cases where me encountering a completely new cast of characters in a completely new setting and story, where the story brought me to my knees. Like, I was absolutely sobbing because of just how well written it was. So I don't think that it's necessary to like, you don't have to spend a lot. And actually FF14 itself has displayed this. The example I usually give is Seto. The Seto side quests, not side quests, but it happened in the main story of Shadowbringers. Seto was its own, like, kind of separate thing. It's a character you don't spend a lot of time with. But in spite of the very, very tiny amount of time you spend even talking to Seto, it's emotionally devastating because it's a well-written character and it's relatable. So I think the time spent telling a story doesn't have a ton to do with whether it's compelling or not.
Criticism we've seen of Endwalker, certainly now, is that it lacks that daily grip, that reason to log in just to play. And we've seen this from content creators and a lot of the community being outspoken that there's just not much to do compared to what I used to do in other expansions.
That's me.
Now, a lot of people have said there's a lack of content. So let's take a closer look at that.
And I just want to say, I made a second video after that first one. That's that Zepla imposter. Yeah, is that really me? She has a different hair color. Sorry, but I hated this video from you. Why? Did you watch the one that I put out after that? I gotta say, I listened to what a lot of people said after that video, and that's how the video I put out right after that came about, because I realized that I am mid-core, and I had a lot of really casual players tell me that they liked Endwalker, and I really tried to listen to these people that disagreed with me and internalize what they had to say and figure out, well, why don't I agree with them? Like, because I want to agree with them. I want to enjoy the game, obviously. So I'm like, I really tried to listen. And that's when I found out that Endwalker released a lot of really successful casual content. And I thought that I was being casual, but I actually never was. I'm mid-core or sometimes hardcore. And that's why I made the next video, which was about how Endwalker and honestly FF14 has kind of shifted where we have really casual content that makes casual players happy. Like with the Relics is pretty positively received by casual players. And then we have ultimates, which are incredible. Like DSR came out in Endwalker, and that's one of the best ultimates. I mean, I think it's the best content in the game, period. But it's very well received by hardcore players. But in the middle, we have a lot of sort of disgruntled mid-core players like myself who felt kind of like, well, I just want to log in every day and challenge myself a little bit. I don't want to do something that's so like, that's that's so easy I can just breeze through it. But I don't want to do something so hard that's going to require a huge commitment. And like, I want to be able to log in day after day and do something, you know, mildly stimulating for someone that's been playing a long time. And that's something that I feel like Endwalker really fell short on.
Welcome back to school. Let's consider expansion content and what's in there.
You said, no offense, Seth, but I found it a bit ranty. It could have been more composed, but I know it came from the heart. Yeah, I think you're probably right. Like, if I could go back and record it again, it would probably be more calm. But I think that I had just come back from a, 6-7 month break from the game. I was still feeling like kind of not not good. And I think making the video was sort of cathartic. Like, there was a lot that I had been thinking about for like 6 months. And so when it all came out, it ended up being a little ranty. That's true. I think that's totally valid.
The raids, they're all there. In fact, Pandemonium had as good a story as we expect from Omega, Alexander, Eden, it doesn't matter. But all the raiders then started to encounter another problem. You see, Final Fantasy XIV, as I'm sure many of you know, works on a very homogeneous job style. Yeah, they have slightly different resources and different abilities, but overall, the big picture, they all kind of work the same. And that allows CBU3 to make some very simple decisions. They can balance things way, way easier. They don't have to worry about multiple talent setups, crazy gear setups, or anything like that. However,
so the game's really
players
balanced
do like having some nice differences between their jobs. When it came to the raiding, the biggest feedback I got from all the raiders was the horror of the 2-minute window. Now, if you're not a raider, this might not make sense to you. So we have 0, 4 minutes, right middle, 2. So what's the 2-minute window? It's actually pretty simple. Cooldowns, big DPS cooldowns or tanking cooldowns or whatever you have in your character are designed to be used sparingly, right? You use them whenever they're available and they give you a big boost to your character's performance. The problem was in Endwalker, and became even more obvious with the ultimates, so we had Omega and DSR, is that these cooldowns do tremendous amounts of damage. And in an MMO, when you put them all together, so let's say you have this window where your cooldowns will be up somewhere in there, in here, if you do things like my character does more crit, another character has a thing where the boss takes more damage. More damn. And then somebody else has a cooldown that gives you haste. All these things stack up together on top of each other. So you then multiply that by like 8 characters, and what you see is a DPS graph that suddenly goes like this.
Yeah.
If you don't fit into this area, then in fact you're just becoming a detriment to the team. And that's the simple fact. If your DPS cooldowns are here, then it goes, or if your DPS cooldowns are here, you go, and this one gets shorter. And so what happened was, any jobs that didn't fit inside here got abandoned. And so CBU3 was presented with the problem, because this is a real problem when you have
the jobs are stored in the
massive DPS checks on boss encounters, and you can cut entire phases out of fights. Simple as that. And so they made the decision, we'll just make everybody 2 minutes. Now, why is that a problem? Because it also makes every single fight the same. It's all about 2 minutes, 2 minutes, 2 minutes. And now every single raider will tell you that most of the planning goes into when do we use our 2 minutes. And it's
and if something goes wrong during that 2-minute cooldown you got, you might as well just wipe, because that's it. All your damage is there. So basically it's boring, because the rest of the time it feels like things don't matter. And it's just not, it also, there used to be abilities that other jobs, I'm muted? No, I'm not. Hey, there used to be abilities that other jobs would do before the 2 minutes that made them feel like they're bringing something unique and special to the encounter. But you know what? I just realized. Maybe the devs feel like they had to do this so that they could streamline things a lot more and make it easier to balance, considering the fact they feel pressured to add 2 new jobs with every expansion. Because at the last time that Yoshi P announced the jobs, this was just recently at FanFest, I remember Yoshi P had made some comment that was like expressing how difficult it is to keep adding new jobs all the time, and how it's becoming overwhelming for the team. And I wonder if it would be better to just release less jobs each expansion and focus more on the jobs that we have, and instead of feeling like we gotta have 2 new jobs every single time. I don't know. That's just an idea that I have, and a reason why I feel like, oh, they are just planning ahead to streamline things as much as possible so that it's more reasonable for them to spend time balancing all these jobs. Because it's like there's a ton already. There's 19. That's just my idea. The other thing is wanting to make the game more accessible to newer players and people who aren't in a coordinated raid team, where you can have really fun and stimulating conversations about when we're all going to plan to use our cooldowns. That was something that was really engaging and fun for a lot of raid groups, but it's something that most players never did, never would do, never gonna do. And so Yoshi P and the team are thinking, well, how can we make this game more accessible to the other players that just need to be able to press the button when it's off cooldown? But of course, this has the detriment of simplifying things excessively for people in these coordinated raid groups. And so it just becomes like, I don't know, like is there another way? Is there a middle path, right?
Tedious and it's tiresome. And that homogeneity that exists in FF14 may only get worse. Of course, we got Pictomancer and...
That said, I will say one other thing. In spite of the 2-minute meta, I had a fantastic time in DSR. I mean, DSR had a fucking amazing time. So maybe it's possible to work within this meta that they seem like they are not going to change. Like, I don't think this is going away. It's not going away. But maybe it's possible for there to be content that you can do that's maybe not as heavily time investment as DSR, that you can still have fun in. I would like something that maybe I could hop in by myself and do. God, I don't know. I'm just spitballing now.
Viper coming in Dawn Trail, and they're not very happy. However, if we look at some other content, the Beast Tribes, for example, when compared to the frustrations people have, the pets, the mounts, all the cosmetics were up to an S-class tier. So let's take a closer look. Let's go somewhere a bit special and really find out about this lack of content. Welcome to all the things that make up an expansion in a typical Final Fantasy XIV setting.
Oh my
Here
God.
we can really compare old expansions, new expansions, and all the features that make them up. Let's start with one of the obvious ones people complain about with Endwalker, and that is the lack of a raid trial series. These would be your Wurlits, your Four Lords, and of course, your Warring Triad.
Oh my God.
Now, this didn't exist in Endwalker. Or did it? Well, yes, it did. But they decided to make a change. They decided to split it in two. On the one hand, we had the bosses.
Oh my God.
And these were sent off to the MSQ. And you might wonder why. They were perfectly fine the way they were. They were unique, interesting stories, all leading to bosses. Well, the likely reason is, after dealing with a lot of MMO companies, just not enough people were doing them to justify the expense of creating them. A lot of people join FF14 and just play the MSQ and then log out. They don't even know, in some cases, that the raid series and extra stories exist. But what about the actual story element itself then? Where did that go wrong? Well, actually, this time around, it was moved over to Tatara. Her adventures and our adventures of visiting a lot of old faces across Aetherius and seeing what they were up to and giving you that extra storyline to go along with. So the story and the raid series and the bosses do exist, but change in an MMO is very dangerous. People like what they like. A lot of old elements came back to life. Hildebrand, who hadn't been seen for a while, brought back into the game itself.
Oh my God.
And of course, alongside that, much to the love of the community, the Blue Mage brought back as well. Even more content.
But they didn't give us
new
them out for
sparks were created. Criterion Dungeons.
Criterion Dungeon.
CBU3's answer to a lot of the West joining FF14 and demanding what they had seen in other games. Low group counts, really hard challenging content, and they delivered. The Criterion Dungeons did provide...
Give Chris a raise, right? Right?
That as well as still being suitable for casual players. However,
I know.
No reason whatsoever to farm them. And then we had another new idea. Island Adventures. So exciting. In the FF14 world, we're getting the Stardew Valley Animal Crossing style simulator, and people were so excited. In fact, Island Adventures were one of the things I was so excited for.
Me too.
I'd never tried those kind of games, but to do it...
Yeah, but you know what's good about those games? the relationships that you make in those games. That's what those games are like. That's one of the things that's most fun about those, that makes you really want to come back to your little island or come back to your town, is the relationships you make with the little guys who are hanging out there, who like you're friends with, or you want to bring them something that they'll like. And I feel like that's where we kind of dropped the ball, because it was just ended up filling a spreadsheet.
14, sure. And I played.
Yes, I did want to make it a dating sim. Yes, I did. Yes, I did. I wanted to put NPCs on my island and like invite Estinian so he could hang out on the beach with his, his hair flowing in that shirt that's like unbuttoned, and then like Dragon Song could be playing. Like that's what I imagined. So of course I was disappointed.
The life out of it. This was the first time in 14 I've actively farmed something. But unfortunately, it very quickly turned into a spreadsheet simulator that none of us wanted. And it died.
Collecting the pets is really fun. That's really fun. They have fantastic rewards in there. Like lots of stuff that takes a while to get, you got to grind for. So they did a lot of things right. And yet, the core of it being built around this spreadsheet was just such a baffling decision, because I feel like there's a lot of things they did right with it.
My love of it
so frustrating.
Died. The one thing about Final Fantasy XIV and CBU3 is they're going to iterate and keep growing on it. More Criterion dungeons are coming, still no real reason to farm it. And we know that we're going to be traveling the stars in Dawn Trail.
But I'm Hopium, actually, for Dawn Trail, because they said they're going to bring it back. They're not giving up. They're not giving up on the lifestyle content, and I'm really glad. I would like them to think about the feedback and then reimagine it based on that. So I'm feeling pretty hopeful for whatever they plan.
With the next iteration of what Island Adventures will be. And Endwalker didn't stop there.
What's it going to be?
Ishgardian Housing. That joined us.
Yeah.
We also got Data Center Travel.
I wonder what the next housing
that joined us as well. And we got a brand new deep dungeon to go along with it.
Maybe Charlene.
And the Crystalline Conflict joined us as well.
Crystalline Conflict is
Endwalker
good.
Brought with it, as you can see,
tons
and tons of content and features. Several of them brand new.
Yes.
So when players are saying there's just not enough content, what exactly are they talking about?
Indeed. They gave us a lot of shit, and a lot of it was risky and new and innovative. So why do people keep complaining that there is not enough to do? Why do people feel like after a patch, a major patch, everybody's done with it in like a few days or a week, maybe 2 weeks? What's going on?
Well, we discussed the change of the norm in some cases. This is always going to be upsetting, but the big one people bring up is the Relic grind, especially when compared to Eureka and my personal favorite, Bosnia. At this point, we should talk about the elephant in the room. Final Fantasy XVI. Many have decried the team's involvement on 16 as the reason for a big hole existing in 14's Endwalker. Yoshi P already has a very busy schedule, so adding 16 to his plate is definitely going to affect something.
I don't know.
More clearly, Yoshi P made it very, very loud and clear he actively wanted people to be able to complete their favorite activities in 14 in a night.
He did, though. He did say that a lot. He did say that lots of times. But I don't think that they would... I don't think that that necessarily means that he's admitting to being like, hey, this is why we gave you less replayable content. So, like, I don't know if that equals an admission of that. It could just be him wanting you to play it. You know, I don't think we should read into that too much. I honestly, I'm not that convinced that FF16 took a lot of resources away, because I don't know. No one knows. We can only guess. No one knows that unless you were there in the studio and you have access to all their spreadsheets and how much time everybody was spending working on everything. All we can do is guess, and that's not,
timely manner in order to free people up to play 16.
Yeah, it's the same studio.
You might remember the live letter of him discussing reducing the...
I'm not saying it's out of the question. I'm just saying I don't know.
Gearing process for raiding for this exact reason. No doubt the relic grind was under similar scrutiny. In the past, it was common that your first relic would be relatively easily obtainable, but then collecting them all for all the jobs would be a long-term endeavor. Endwalker has literally no long-term goals, and that is poison for the people who just want to play their favorite game. While it's easy to say, hey, just go play other games, including the game director himself, the reality is there are many people who just don't want to. And a monthly paid MMO should also be catering to those people.
I mean, yeah.
The Endwalker Relic Hunt was...
I do feel like that's the number one issue with the game lacking some replayability with a lot of this content, is that it's monthly sub. They want you to pay for 30 days a month every month. So I feel like they should give you little things to work on every day. Like maybe try to encourage more people to be logged in together. Because yes, you can find your own things to work on every day if you want. But whenever you have big content that is incentivized so that everybody wants to do it together, you have social groups form. Like you can meet up and do those things with your friends. And Endwalker kind of moved away from that, moved more into like the solo stuff or the small group stuff. And I think that in an MMO where you want people to come back day after day, really the thing that keeps most people coming back in day after day is the friends that they have and their FC and the active social groups. But if you want there to be social cohesion and active social groups, there needs to be exciting things happening in the game that lots of people want to log in to do. And that's what Baja did for a lot of people. Something that people will work on day after day for maybe a while. Yeah, that's what the Relic did. That's what the Relic journey did. With Shadowbringers too, like you could just get one Relic and it wasn't that bad to get. But a lot of people, they ended up getting lots of different Relic weapons in Baja. And another thing that Baja did really well that preserved social groups and kept, like preserved that social cohesion was Baja was also really good leveling zone. It still is a really good way to level. And so because of that, a lot of people found themselves there to level, to get relic stuff, but Baja's just one example. Anyway, I'll just
reduced to simply farming tomestones. Not that many of them either, and just getting the relics given to you. Now this has a twofold effect. Firstly, obtaining them is not only easy, but also boring, as you aren't doing some niche, separate piece of content with its own pros and cons like Bosnia, but instead you're just doing dungeons and journals as you would ordinarily do, and hunting across the plains. Secondly, it makes the relics mundane. Nothing is special if everybody has it. Relic collections were previously a badge of honor for the day-to-day players. Seeing their jobs with the harder-to-grind relics felt so rewarding, and you knew that not many players could have achieved what you had done.
Yeah, but
yet now,
one thing I've learned after talking to casual players and listening to them is that I used to think this was casual content. I actually used to think, oh, the relic, they should have it like it used to be. Because that used to be something casual players could work on a little bit day after day for months. And what I'm saying doesn't make any fucking sense. Because casual players don't do that. Okay. For casual players, the poetics for it, or like, the tomestones for relics is like a wet dream. It's amazing. It's fantastic. So I feel like if you're going to get rid of that thing that mid-core players had before to work on and stay engaged with the game a lot over the course of an expansion, it needs to be replaced with something else. So if you're going to give relics to make it more casual, that's fine. But there needs to be something else that fills that niche that used to be filled from the way relics worked before. That's the issue that I see. That there's now there's like a void left. And so players that throughout the last expansion would just log in. Right now they'd be working on getting a buttload of relics. They just sitting around with their thumbs up their butt because they have a shitload of tomestones already. And so
now it means nothing.
Maybe two separate relics. Yeah, maybe.
Back in World of
Maybe
Warcraft's
some
Legion
titles.
expansion, a weapon
I don't know
known as
what.
Ashbringer, a legendary sword that had its own fan fiction, crackpot theories, was suddenly just equipped
Oh yeah,
by
I remember
anyone
you could
who
fish Ashbringer out of
happened
the river.
to play a paladin. All spectacle and mystery of the weapon was suddenly lost to the ether.
Yeah.
This was a gap in the game that nothing could fill.
I mean,
and while we could entirely shift the blame to FF16, it should be considered there are now so many jobs in the game that having huge long grinds for completionists is somewhat becoming untenable. There are 2 more jobs coming in Dawntrail. The next version of this Relic content, which we know is coming, well, it may never be what you hope it would be.
So that's new. The consideration that because of how many jobs there are, that in itself is the new grind. So like getting every job to max level should be the new grind. I mean, maybe if you could get, I don't even know what they would do. What would be cool is to have like new unique mounts for every job when you get it to max level for every expansion. That'd be pretty sick. So like a thematic mount for that job. So that way you're incentivized, but there's no way they would do that. That would take way too much time. But I remember with Shadowbringers, we got the amazing Amaro mount for getting all your jobs to 80. And that made me level every job, even the ones I don't like. I did it, and every like a ton of people did it because it was an incredible reward, and that was a fun journey. That I spent a lot of time doing that. But they didn't do that for Endwalker. Instead of a mount for getting all the jobs to max level, this time it was just like a hair ribbon that most people were like skipped. It's because it's a shitload of effort for a ribbon. It's just not. I don't think the reward doesn't match the effort. Yeah, feather or something. Yeah, you can't even dye it. God. Yeah, I feel like that was a huge mistake that they made. That Preach made a good point here. Having a buttload of jobs is an incredible asset for people that want to spend more time in the game every day. Because it's going to take you a while to get them all to max. Even if you already started the expansion with all your jobs at 80. Now you've got to get them all to 90. So, I don't know.
As we move away from Endwalker,
that would have been
and as someone
smart.
who wasn't looking to play it every single day, I have to say I had a blast. It's an A rank for me. But it had its problems. Criterion dungeons were great until they weren't. Island adventures were amazing until they weren't.
Oh my god.
But I'm still so happy to see that they kept trying new things while maintaining a lot of the old school things.
They did try a lot of new
but
stuff.
Now we turn to Dawntrail. On which path will they take? I don't think anything will ever beat Shadowbringers for me. The post MSQ had mixed reaction. So whatever they do to launch Dawntrail with, it has to be an absolute banger. But I have the utmost faith in their storytelling. I know for one that when it launches, I'll be getting my brush out and pictomancing immediately. And then I'll do the MSQ a little later, after you guys have had your fill. But wherever we go, we're going to have a good time.
Pictomancing?
I choose this way.
But both of those ways go to Dawntrail. Like, so either way, you would have been going to the same spot. Oh my god. I love these skits though. Oh. Oh my god. We need to get the cosplay for Mike. Wow, that was awesome.
And what you see is a DPS graph that suddenly goes like this. And what you don't see, no. It was too tempting. And the thing was,
he couldn't not. So that wasn't the plan originally, but he just couldn't avoid.
3, 2, 1.
Oh my god.
And the thing is, if you didn't fit into... It is at the top.
Oh, he's struggling so much.
Sorry,
Oh my god.
3, 2, 1.
Oh my god.
If you didn't fit into... I need to get out of this.
He can't do it. He cannot do it. He cannot.
3,
We're very serious and professional.
3. Oh.
There's... Oh no! Stop.
That is what happens. I'm not lying.
Oh my god. Holy shit.
And so what happened was...
Well, look, overall, it was an epic video. It was amazing. I really enjoyed it. The editing was, like, insane. Insane editing. Let's put a link in the chat for our friend Mike.